Well, you've heard the phrase, it all starts with a name, and truer words have never been spoken, especially when it comes to creating your brand. Now, your artist or band name has the potential to actually engage an audience or completely turn them off. If it's too complicated, you're going to deal with misspellings and mispronunciations, and there's also legal and copyright issues to consider as well. So, what's in a name? Actually, quite a lot. No cap. Well, hey there, welcome to ChristianArtist.Pro. My name is Kevin. I've been walking alongside hundreds of artists for the past couple decades. Many of them have been both established and brand new as we create their brand, learn to find and engage audiences, and create compelling content. You've stumbled across one of my videos where I'm just sharing some tips and knowledge that I've picked up along the way, hopefully sharing them with you. Now, you are probably a music artist, but I'm actually having some good conversations with authors or other artists who are using things like paint and charcoal drawings instead of music and instruments. And really, I think a lot of these tips that we're talking about and conversations that we're having apply to any creative. So if you're here, welcome. Hopefully you're in the right spot. You can hit the like button, of course, subscribe, and then ring that bell. That way you get notified with other videos. But one of the most important things I'm seeing is just make a comment, introduce yourself, and that way we can have conversations together and we'll really help shape the direction of future videos that we do. All right, today we're going to be talking about the importance of your artist or band name. 3 things here. 1, is your name important? 2, how do you choose a name? And 3, what do you do after you choose? So those are kind of the areas we're going to park on today. Okay, so let's talk about if your name is important or not. Now, there's a lot of discussion out there, and some coaches actually believe that your name is important. It doesn't matter what you call yourself. As long as people find your audience, there's so many artists out there that it's impossible to choose a name. You can't be unique anymore, so it doesn't really matter. And yes, I believe there's some truth in that, but I also believe valuing the process is incredibly important. Just going through the motions and making sure that what you choose is unique to you, that it is something that you love and identify with versus something that you just choose because you need to make a decision. I think the process is incredibly important. So yes, you can probably find an audience nowadays with any name, and you do some research or even check your own Spotify playlist. You listen to a lot of weirdo artists with names. I mean, who knows what they are anymore? I can't even pronounce half of them. but they've got great music, and I hit follow, and I listen to everything that they do. But I believe that the process is important. So spend the time, value the process that we're going to talk about, make a decision, yes, and then lock it in and just move forward. So let's talk about that first step. How do you choose your name? Well, first of all, just choose your name. Like it's your name. It's probably the safest bet. And if that doesn't work, or if you're not feeling it, choose a variation of your name. You got a middle name, maybe you got a surname. There's a lot of different choices. Just in the Christian music space, Toby Mac was actually born Kevin Michael McKeon. Toby isn't anywhere in his name. It was actually a nickname that his brother gave him because he was born in October. And so they called him Tober, and hence Toby. And of course, Mac comes from his last name. I always find it fascinating that his name is Kevin Michael, and he formed a band called DC Talk with Kevin and Michael. So that just had to be. And it changed the entire course of Christian music. It's a great name origin story. Kirk Franklin, he's a gospel artist. He was born Kirk Smith. Franklin was actually his great aunt's last name who raised him. And so he just combined those 2 names. The majority of the top Christian artists really use their real name. And there's a lot of really strong pop artists who are just born with their name as well. So if it works for you, go with it. Use your real name. Now, if you're band, that's a different story. There are some exceptions, actually. Just in the Christian music space, Stars Go Dim and We Are Messengers. These guys both started out as bands, and then their bands left them, and now they're just their own solo artists. So Darren is actually We Are Messengers, and he's the face of the band. He's got other bandmates that kind of rotate in and out, but Darren is We Are Messengers. So if you're a solo artist, you actually can create a band name and go off that as well. Personally, I find it kind of confusing. I think I always want to attribute a solo artist to a name, and it's always like, huh? Like, I have to wrap my mind around it. So if you're solo artist, if you can find a name, it just helps with that human experience. I relate to you more. It's kind of going back to that authenticity of who you really are. Just roll with it. Here's some ideas. If you're a band, you can actually combine words. Like I think of Mercy Me, and a band that I followed a lot back in the day that I just laugh about their band name was Mike's Chair. There was no one in the band named Mike, and the story didn't exist. They just made it up. But here's the interesting thing. They had to retell that story over and over and over again. They're not around anymore. I don't know if that's related. You can also stake your claim. I think of like for King and Country, this is a mantra for them. I mean, it means something. They are creating an entire culture around their band name. Need to Breathe is another one of those that I've read a lot about, and there's a lot of just passion behind kind of that name. Stake your claim. It has purpose for you. Also, maybe it's just a hobby. Maybe it's something you like to do. Like Switchfoot is a great example of that. They love surfing. They chose their name, Switchfoot. I actually learned really what that meant a couple months ago in Hawaii when I surfed for the very first time, and the guy is like talking about switching my feet. And I was like, whoa, okay, I get it. I've heard them explain it, but now I've experienced it. Okay, I get it. You can also just make up a new word. Cutlass was another band that I loved before, and they took the verse, "For the wages of sin is death, but the free gift of God is eternal life in Christ Jesus our Lord." And because of this, the band says he took our cuts for us, leaving us cutless. Isn't that cool? So you can really just make up your own word, but if you're going to do it with some intentionality. I think that's a challenge for a lot of artists right now. They just make up words and it doesn't mean anything to them. It doesn't mean anything to their audience. Is that the best route to go? It's a route to go, but I think you can do it with a little bit more intentionality. So there's a trend right now, mostly in the rap genre, that I'm noticing. It's kind of interesting. Here's what they're doing. They're either dropping all the vowels, or they're going with like letters only, where you pronounce the letters or say it out loud and it actually sounds like something, but you look at it and you're like, I don't know what that is. Weird spellings. I think it's just a way to try to be unique and quick, and there's only so many options. All right, so you understand the importance of why you have a name. You've gone through some of the brainstorming things. You've kind of locked it down, or at least you're trying to narrow it down. These are the things I want to make sure you do before you hit go. And I'm shocked how many artists don't do this or think about it. So I think this is going to be really important for you. The first tip I can say is just say it and spell it. You should know this fairly quickly. If you've grown up having to spell your name, or maybe you have a friend that has spelt his or her name really weird, you've watched them have to correct the spelling of their name every single time. They'll do this for the end of their life. You gotta really understand, is that what you want to do with your band name? I'm wearing a shirt called from Chris Renzema right now. So many people call him Chris Renzema because it's Renzema. It's actually Renzema. He's gone his whole life having to spell his last name. He's probably used to it, so as an artist, he probably doesn't care. But it's a reality that you got to kind of think about. And the best way to do it, like if you're choosing something other than your name, is to write it down and then maybe give it to complete strangers and just ask them to read it out loud and see if they get it right. You go to 20 random people on the street and just say, hey, could you do me a favor? I'm an artist. I'm trying to think of my name. Can you just read this out loud? And hand them a piece of paper with it and just see what happens. If you get 20 different versions, you've probably got a really complicated name that you want to keep brainstorming on. Because it's going to be really hard. Second tip I would give you is just to Google your name. I mean, I know it sounds really weird, but are there any other creatives or brands with your name? You're not only competing with other artists, you're competing with every single company, every single creative in every other space with your brand. name, because again, we're building brands here. We're not just building artists, we're building an entire brand around what you're going to call it. And so get out there and do some research and make sure no one else has it. Now, is that possible? Yes, it is possible, but it is incredibly daunting and hard. The reality is Spotify has 11 million artists right now. Now they're saying that just short of 200,000 are actually active artists that are actually producing content and getting any kind of streams or actions. And they measure that with like 1,000 streams on a song or 50 followers. Now that is a low like measurement of active artists. So you go from like 11, 12 million down to 200,000. That means there's a lot of names that have been chosen that aren't necessarily active. Can you go in and create a brand around that? Yeah. And we'll talk about the very last check to do to make sure that you actually can. But there's no legal thing preventing you from creating art under another person's name, unless that person has trademarked it, which is why you need to do that search. We'll talk about that here in a second. Here's the other thing I want you to do an image Google search as well. And the reason why this is important is because it really gives you a visual of how your name is going to be searched. I just worked with an artist a couple months ago, and we went and searched her name, and she was shocked what came up. Let's just say it was not content that she wanted to be tied to or represented to. And the reality is people are going to look for you. You want to know what they're going to find, even if it is not you. And if the first things that are coming up are things that don't represent who you are or where you're going as an artist or kind of your values, you need to know that going into it so that you can actually make a wise decision moving forward. So Google your name and then do an image search on your name. Well, after you've Googled your name and established that it's actually something you want to hitch your brand to, go do a domain search. This is where you're going to go to a site like name.com. It's one of my personal preferences. They're great. You can register .coms for like $17 a year, and there's coupon codes all over the place. I'll see if I can put one here in the show notes for you. But do a domain search, and that is www.yourname.com, whether it's your first name, last name.com, that would be preferable, or it's your band name.com. I mean, you got a big win right there. If that's not available, chances are it won't be. What can you do to add to the end of it? Maybe it's your first name, last name, music.com, or it's yournameband.com. There's a band called Red that I follow. They are so hard to find because they named their band Red. So it's just really hard to find them. But their whole socials and domains are thebandred.com. And that's how they've made that accessible to people. Once you've got a domain search, do a social search. My biggest tip for artists is make everything the same, if at all possible. So for example, if it's first name, last name, artist, Kevin McNeese artist, then that's what I want all my socials to be as well. If you follow any band that has done this, you'll see that they have owned everything. And that's really what it is. It's making sure that no one else kind of snags your brand name from you. So you want switchfoot.com and then facebook.com/switchfoot and x.com/switchfoot and instagram.com/switchfoot. You get it. Even if there's social channels that you're not going to go to, like a lot of artists really aren't into TikTok yet, or they don't want to be on X, they think it's the waste of space, that's fine. Go search for it and claim your username, and then you can lock it in. Even if you aren't going to use the channel, make sure that you've secured the name for your brand. Incredibly important. It also makes communicating really easy. If you can just say, hey, go find me at first last name, or go find me at band name band or band name music or whatever. And then you don't have to say, oh, but on Facebook you can find me here, and on Instagram you can find me with this username, and on YouTube I'm this username. Like, what a pain. And so it actually should determine your name. If it's not available in all the places, keep searching. Find something that's unique and across the board. Finally, my recommendation is to do a trademark search. Now, I'm not a lawyer. I am not, don't take me for legal advice, but it is really easy to do. I'm going to put a link in the description below in the show notes, but you can do a quick trademark search and make sure nobody has trademarked your name. If they have rights to it, and you could be under some legal obligations to not use it. Let's just put it that way. Now, what happens if you see a trademark and it's expired? Well, then it's yours for the taking. And so for you as an artist brand, I get that question a lot. Should I trademark my name? It's not cheap. You can find different ways to do it. LegalZoom.com. I'll put a link in the show notes of just the importance of trademarking a name. Of course, they're for it because that's what they do. And you can get an application for like $49, but just be aware that there's a lot of follow-up processes to actually put that into copyright. The filing is cheap, but then the maintenance of that and just all the different variations that you have to do, trademarking your logo and your icon, it can get really expensive in the thousands of dollars. And my question is, do you need it? Are you really going to get that big that fast to where you need to trademark your name? Chances are no one's going to come in behind you. Now, if you start finding some real success that's momentum driven, you might want to put some money into hiring a lawyer and actually locking in that trademark for you. But I don't think it's necessarily needed for newer or artists that are kind of establishing their mark. All right, so if you have passed all of these tests and you feel confident in your direction, you're ready to commit to your name, you're ready to lock in your online presence, and you might want to consider trademarking. And if not, you're continuing to choose a stage name or a band name, and it can be incredibly frustrating. I've done this. I've gone through this process for months to try to find something that is unique, but it is worth it. It is so worth it when you can find something that's unique to you and you can really pursue it with passion. You don't have to be embarrassed about it. You don't have to be frustrated by it. You can actually live in it. Just remember, keep digging if you haven't found it. That's brainstorming process, no matter what you do. Writing a song, naming an album, naming your band, you know how it works. It's not going to be your first round. It might not even be your second round. Keep going. You'll find it, and you'll know it when you do. That's it for today. Thanks for hanging out. Remember, ring that bell, subscribe, and leave a comment. Maybe you've been in this process and you landed on something great. Maybe it hasn't worked out for you and you're a bit frustrated you didn't get this video or have these conversations early on. I'd love to know either way. And you know what? Maybe you just disagree with everything I'm saying. That's totally fine. I'm open to be educated as well. So share your tips and your knowledge with me down in the comments. Until we talk again, take care.